Hello everybody and welcome back to another CB Show Tunes tutorial. Now today's tutorial we're going to be covering a script on our character. Now initially I released a video that would cover both our animation and our script together, but I ended up that for this script to work it took a lot of time, so I sort of rushed that video, and so I recently put out a video covering the animation side of things, and this right here is going to be the script side of things. So just make sure that you do go back to the animation side. I believe it's called Animator and Animation Override Controllers. And it's prior to this video, I believe. But yeah, once you check out that video, you'll be able to come over to this video and then find the script and be able to have a result similar to this. So cool. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now to begin with, we're going to actually cover our player controller. I did update the script inside of the original optimized character controller that I set up in a couple videos ago. So if you want to copy that script from there, you can, or you can simply modify your script from here. So we're going to be covering just the new functions right here. Alright, so you're going to need a private float called velocity speed. Velocity speed is going to determine which direction we're going to be moving and how fast we're moving inside that direction. I found that 75 was a pretty good speed to move, and this force is going to only apply whenever we're holding a key in a specific direction. We also added a public float for jump height. This is how high we're going to be hopping, or the strength of our jump. We're also going to be having a public bool called isFalling. That's pretty much just going to determine whether or not we're on the ground or not. And then of course we have a float called drop rate, which I set to 3. And what this is that it's a constant acceleration that drags you down over time. And we'll get more into that in a second. Okay, if we head over here to our jump region right here, you're going to notice this if statement. So we have a question, so we're going to say, okay, if we press the jump button down and we're on the ground, so if isFalling is equal to false, then we're going to say isFalling is equal to true, so we're going to make sure that you cannot activate this again. We're also going to grab a rigid body and we're going to add a force to it. We're going to grab our y-axis and we're going to multiply that by jump height. Then we're going to choose the force mode, and I preferably would like the impulse mode because it's just a constant force that's immediate. It doesn't take a little bit of time to actually build up. Now you can adjust these to whatever you want it to be, like you have acceleration, force, impulse, and velocity change. But personally for jumping, I prefer impulse. We also come over here and we say anim.setTrigger jump. Now if you watched my previous video, then you would have seen how our animator was set up with our base layer and all. So what we're calling here is we're going to be calling our parameter of jump right here, which is a trigger. And so whenever we call this trigger, it's going to activate the any-state transition, which basically states that if we're jumping and isFalling is equal to true, right? Then this is going to activate. Next we have if we're sprinting, we're going to add the velocity. So we're going to say if input.getAxis, our horizontal axis, and we're going to say if it's less than 0, which means that we're going to, or it's greater than 0, which means we're going right. Then we're going to grab this custom function that I created called axis velocity speed update. We're going to grab our horizontal axis and our velocity speed. Then we're going to do the opposite for if it's going left, and we're going to do the same thing with this one right here. We're going to call this vertical right there, and basically it's going to use the same method that we used up here. Now if we keep going down, you're going to see another if statement. So we're going to say if isFalling is equal to true, then we're going to grab our rigid body, we're going to go add force, we're going to say transform.up, or our y-axis. We're going to multiply that by a negative of drop rate. So our constant force of down. Our force mode is acceleration. Okay, so that covers our jump function. Let's go ahead and keep rolling down. Now, if you go to our animation tab right here, you're going to find anim.setBool is falling is equal to is falling. So this simple function right here is going to take our current bool, which is falling, and it's going to check with our animation bool called is falling. So as you can see, we created this boolean called is falling. So whenever our script calls that we're falling, then it's going to change this animation bool to say that we are falling. So it's pretty basic and very easy to pick up. Okay, so that's our animation side. Let's go and close that down. And then, of course, we now have this function. So with this function, it's called the axis velocity speed update. I simply put a string called axis name and a float called velocity speed. So here we ask if our axis name is equal to vertical. Then we're going to grab our rigid body. We're going to say add force. We're going to grab our z, and we're going to multiply it by velocity speed. Then we're going to say our force mode dot force. Now this right here is basically adding a force or a continuous force to the object. It's going to say, okay, we're going to just push this object. Now you could change this to something like impulse. You could change this to something like acceleration. In fact, we could actually test it out, but for now we're going to leave it as force. And we did the same thing with our axis if it's equal to horizontal, except we changed the direction from z to x. Then we're going to multiply that by velocity speed and do the same thing with force mode dot force. And of course, our last, I guess you could say that the last part of this is the collision and triggers, also our Animator. So if you ever have used coroutines before, they seem rather complicated at first, and they can be depending on how advanced your coroutine methods are. I used a very basic wait function inside a coroutine, so it was actually pretty simple for this specific method. So as you can see, we have an on collision enter. Then we're going to say if is falling. Then we're going to start our coroutine, our fall check. So we're going to be initializing this check whenever we hit an object, and then we have to determine if we're falling. If we're not falling, it's not going to start this coroutine. Then we're going to grab our public Animator called fall check, and here we're going to yield a return as a new wait for seconds, and then we're going to put it in a couple seconds or milliseconds. And the reason why we're running this return new as a wait for seconds is that anything below this is not going to activate till this time has run out. Once it's run out, it's going to activate is falling is equal to false, and we're going to stop our coroutine, which is this one right here. Otherwise, this will continually run over and over and over again, and it will just be a mess. So that's why we got that there. Okay, so that's all we needed to do with this specific one. I'm going to go and just open all these back up again, and yeah, I'll post this inside of the comment section below. Actually, no, this was already posted, so we'll just leave that as is. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to close that, and now we're going to go over to our other things. So for our character to be able to move with his weapon and all, we created a specific script for him. So we created this weapon controller. Now the weapon controller is going to require a couple things. It's going to require a boolean called weapon equipped. It's going to require a weapon script called weapon. It's going to require a public transform called chestbone, a vector 3 of look, offset, and a transform of target to look at. Now I know these are very complicated, or seem rather complicated, but it's very, very simple. So before we actually get into this, we're going to head over to our weapon script. Now, our weapon script is a scriptable object. If you never have used scriptable objects before, think of it like a script that you can put on multiple different objects and it holds the same data, right? It's not actually running as a controller script, but it's more running as a information input script. So inside of this scriptable object called weapon, we basically have a create asset menu. We have this menu name is equal to create asset new weapon. Now how this works is whenever we go over here and say create asset menu, it's going to be calling this menu right here. From there, we simply need to call our menu name and we're going to say create asset, right? So we can right click, go over to create, and as you can see we have create asset. And then you just simply type in the rest, so new weapon, and there it is. So this specifically really only works with scriptable objects unless you have other types of code involved, at least to my knowledge. So if I'm wrong, make sure that you leave that in the comment section below so I can fix that. Alright, inside this weapon, all we need is a public game object for our prefab, a public weapon type, which is down here, a public enum, called weapon type, and a public runtime animator controller, which we covered that inside of the previous video. Alright, so this public enum called weapon type, we just simply need to fill out all the weapon types for our objects. So you could have a sword, bow, rifle, pistol, whatever you feel like you want to have. Okay, so we're going to head back over here. And you should have this working now whenever you type in public weapon, because it now has this script available. You're also going to need one more thing, which is our animator. So we're going to call that anim. Now if we go over to our void start function, anim is equal to get component in children animator. Now I believe I covered this before, but I'm going to cover it again just in case you guys don't understand. So whenever we're calling the animator on this weapon controller, there is no animator on this game object right here, right? It's actually located inside of our graphics empty game object, right? So right here. So for us to be able to access this without actually having to get it from a public variable, we just need to simply say, okay, we're going to get it from a child. So it's going to search all the children of this game object. And this is the only one with an animator on it. So that's the one we're going to use. Okay, so we now have this working. Next, we're going to say if our weapon is not equal to null. So we're going to be searching to see if this is equal to null or not. Then we're going to set our runtime animator controller is equal to our current weapon that we have. Next, we're going to say anim.setLayer or setLayer weight 1 and 1. So when we're setting our layer weight, this is going to be grabbing our animator right here, and we're going to be finding a layer. So set layer, and then it's going to be finding which layer. So if you actually take a look at this and hover your mouse over it, you're going to notice it says int layer index and float weight. So this works similar to an array, to where 0 is number 1, 1 is number 2, and so on. So whenever we're setting this up, this base layer is 0 and bow and arrow layer is 1. So we're going to be accessing our bow and arrow layer. Then we're going to be selecting our clog, and it's going to be checking our weight, and it's going to automatically be setting this to 1. Cool. Alright, so we also have weapon equipped is equal to true. This does not have to actually equal to true if you don't want it to be. You can actually disable that if you want. But personally, for this specific tutorial, we're going to be starting our character out with a weapon. So we're going to just do that. So underneath our void update function, we're going to say if our weapon equipped is equal to false, return. Which means that if our weapon is not equipped, we're not going to be using our weapon. Then we don't actually need these animations to be happening. But if they are, then we're going to be able to attack. So here we have a region for our bow, and this region will basically ask this question. We're going to say if our weapon type is equal to our weapon of weapon type bow. So we're going to be grabbing our weapon. So our weapon, it's going to be checking our weapon type. Then it's going to say, okay, is this weapon type right here equal to our bow? Another way that you could see this is if you actually create your scriptable object as a new weapon. So create new weapon. Oh, I accidentally clicked off of it. Create new weapon. What you're going to see is this option. So it's going to be checking this option right here and says, okay, is it a bow or not? And then it will allow us to be able to use the bow and arrow. So let's head back over there. Then it's going to say, okay, so we're going to say anim.setBowl is aiming. So we're going to check our is aiming, and we're going to use the get button aim as a boolean. So it's going to check if we're pressing the aim button, then is aiming is equal to true. Otherwise, it's equal to false. Then we're going to run down here, and we're going to make sure that we can only fire if our arrow is fully drawn. So we're going to say if anim.getCurrentAnimatorStateInfo, which is going to be grabbing our layer. So we're going to be grabbing our first layer, number 1, .isName. So we're going to be finding the state, which is our hold state. So if we head over here to Unity, you're going to see our hold state. So if we're inside our hold state, then we're going to be able to do something. And we get our input.getButton down, attack. So whenever we press the attack key, then we're going to set our trigger to attack. So now if we head over here again, we're now able to activate this transition to attack. Okay, so now since we have the bow set up, let's roll down here and go over to the late update function. Now this is required to be inside the late update function because it is an absolute necessity. Otherwise, it just will not work. So I obviously put in the other if our weapon is not equipped, then we're going to return. So we're not going to actually access this. But this is where the magic happens. So if we are pressing the aim button, then we're going to set our chest bone to look at our target, to look at .position. So we'll be setting this up inside of Unity. But basically, we're going to be looking at a transform within the game world. Then we're going to set player chest rotation. So chestbone.rotation is equal to our current rotation multiplied by quaternion.euler of look offset. And this is basically just adding a offset value to our chestbone rotation. And this, of course, will be inside the comment section below because it is quite a long script. This right here, just copy that script and yeah. Okay, so let's head back over here into Unity and add all the stuff we need. So with our weapon, make sure that you do create a asset as a new weapon and then add your weapon. You can give it a name from here. You can give it a prefab. You can give it a weapon type. You can give it a Animator override controller. Just make sure that you did create those from the previous tutorial. Okay. From there, you can simply just grab your player and then drag and drop onto your weapon. Okay. The next thing that you're going to need is your chest bone. This can be any form of bone within your character, but preferably you should go for like spine 1 or spine 2. It just has a better look to it. Then you're going to go for look offset. This you're going to have to adjust during runtime. So whenever you press play, you're going to adjust this value. So if I press play, you're going to basically adjust this to where you need it to be. And then you're going to press the look key and see where it is. Now obviously that looks horrible. 90 I thought looked really, really good. just like that. But you can adjust the values to whatever you need it to be, and it will do that for you. So cool. And the last thing inside this is our target to look at, and this target dummy is actually located on the main camera as a child of it. So as you can see, target dummy. We're going to go over to our scene, and you're going to drag it out a little distance into the scene. So I set it to a position of 10 in front of the camera. It has no collision, so it's just going to be running through everything, and you can actually set the layer as a ignore raycast because we don't want it to be interacted with. All we want it to be is just a reference object for our character to look at. So whenever we press play again, it's going to allow us to basically look at the object whenever we actually are here. So cool. And there it is, guys. That is the entire script and how to work with it. I know it was super long, but yeah, it works really, really effectively. Make sure that you do grab the player control script from the optimized player character from our previous videos. And of course, also make sure that you do remember to go back and get the weapon script for our scriptable object. That way you'll be able to get that written down. And of course, like I said, I will provide the actual weapon controller for your character inside of the comment section below. Alright, I hope this video helped, and of course, if you liked it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out some other videos, and of course, if you have any questions, make sure to leave those in the comment sections as well, improvements, etc. And I'll see you guys next time.